Hello and welcome back to the RevOps show. We're in part 2 of what is now turning into a 3-part series on CRM implementation and what they should cost. If you haven't listened to part 1 yet, I would highly recommend listening to that episode first. Today, Doug and Jess are working through the different aspects of what actually goes into the cost. They get into the different types of implementations, the different parts of them, what those should cost, and they also get into a bit of the status quo and the cost of not changing. So with that, let's listen as they work through it.
Jess!
Doug!
There we go. That's what I'm talking about. That is what I'm talking about.
It's time to get things started on the most.
You know what I could go for right now?
A nap?
Well, that's a safe answer with me. But other than a nap,
I don't know.
I could go for an ice cream sandwich right now.
Well, that does sound good. That does sound good.
I don't know why, but like about 20 minutes ago, I just was like,
We were on a call with a client and they were eating famous Amos cookies this week, and I've been craving famous Amos cookies ever since.
Oh yeah. By the way, for those of you that noticed that I left, my wife's back home. My dog disappeared, and I heard a little rumbling. And she is definitely into the phase where the entire world is her chew toy, and there's very little now that she can't get to. Jess, very, very, very.
Well,
little.
she's like the size of a human, so like a full-grown adult human.
She lies on the bed sometimes, fully out, like her front paw is up and her back paw is back, and I think she takes up more. I think she's taller than me if you go paw to paw.
You let her on the bed? We don't let Max on the bed.
What's the point of having a dog if you don't let him on the bed?
No. Max hasn't earned his right to be on the bed.
Oh my God. She comes on. There she is, everybody.
Look, see, we have a guest star. Dakota's here.
Here we go. Let's see. She doesn't usually show herself when we're doing these things.
There she is.
There she is. You see those
Everybody
muddy
meet
paws.
Dakota.
It's been raining. You see that? That's all through the house. All through the house. Oh yeah, she comes on. She wrestles. She pushes people out of the way. She the other night, I guess she was doing something, and she started kicking her paws, and she kicked me right in the kidney.
Ugh.
And it hurt. Yeah, it was like, yeah, it's I mean, I work for her.
She's running the house at this point.
Oh yeah.
I mean, basically.
Oh, easily.
Basically.
Easily. All right, Jess. Well, we're
Part two.
Part two. It's part 2 or part 2.5?
Part 2.5.
Part 1.67. Didn't you ever see Naked Gun movies?
Oh yeah. Okay.
Naked Gun part 2.5?
Yeah. Wasn't it? Okay. I don't remember. Yeah.
So is this a sequel to the previous episode?
This is the sequel. Everybody's been waiting.
Or is it a continuation?
Anticipating. Continuation. Not the sequel.
Or is it a reboot?
Continuation. Oh my God. Welcome to my life, everyone.
We're back on Friday afternoon, everybody.
We are. I don't know that Friday morning was any better, but
did I just jump the shark? Oh, see how I'm weaving that all together?
But I'm
my knowledge of the entertainment of the entertainment jargon.
Yep.
Yeah, so what are we talking about, Jess? I can't remember.
I don't know, because we've had a week today. It's been a hell of a week this Friday.
Yeah, but I know you did a lot of prep. I know you are.
I'm super duper prepared for this. What to expect when you're expecting a CRM implementation part 2. That's what we're doing.
It's a creative title. I'm curious who came up with that one.
I wonder.
We're talking about the cost of CRM implementation.
Yep.
I think your takeaway last week was it is unwise to pay too little, but it's worse to pay too much when you pay too little.
Yep.
So when you pay too much, you might lose a little bit of money, but that's all. If you pay too little, you may lose the thing that
lose everything.
And so I think we talked about the Prime Directive last time, and I think that I want to make sure that we emphasize that because that really drives the context of this entire conversation. And by the way, if you don't take into account the Prime Directive, you can't really calculate the cost. And more on that in a minute, but the Prime Directive is the business process must drive the technology. The technology should never dictate the business process. And I'll probably give a little bit of a corollary to that later on today. Talked about kind of different approaches to implementation, different types of implementation. And just to bring everybody up to date that hasn't listened to the previous episode, we've gotten a lot of good feedback on it so far.
Mm-hmm.
I heard your mom said really good things about it.
My mom thought it was amazing.
You know, the key to comedy is being able to stick with it on a sustained period for a sustained period. I promise you, next inbound, someone's going to ask you about your mom.
Somebody is. And you know what? At some point, I need to have Karen watch the show so she can see just how much we talk about her.
I thought she does.
Yeah, all the time. She's our number one fan.
You told me that she did. I actually thought like this whole thing started because I thought she actually watched and listened. She
has listened to a few episodes for sure. Okay.
So the topic of RevOps didn't keep her attention?
No, and I don't really want to say on here what she said because it was a slight to me.
Okay, well we'll save that for a future episode, everybody.
Yep.
So what we're talking about is a full implementation in the category that colloquially we refer to as rip and replace. So yep. You are either coming from no real system or you're using an existing system. And I would say that well, actually, we're going to get into areas of consideration, et cetera. So I can get into that. And then also one of the things that we talked about last time is a critical choice you have to make is, are you going to, what a critical decision you have to make is what's your platform choice?
Yep. And
there are basically 3 platform types. There's the work in, you're using a single tool. Yep. Primarily it's driving everything. So that is the best example of that. The leader in that platform choice would be HubSpot. Mm-hmm. There's the build on. So the work in, the build on, that is where you're going to be using multiple systems tied together through good integration, et cetera. The leader there is Salesforce.
Yep.
And then the third is what I refer to as the no platform, where you're basically going to use a series of point solutions. You may have various integrations, but you're not really platforming. And you can listen to the previous episode. We do get into, I think, some important elements about what that platform decision means, because so much of what your experience is going to be, and by the way, so much of where the costs are going to get allocated are going to be based on what is that platform decision.
Yep.
So that was a summary of our first episode.
Yep. So now let's dig into. There we go.
Now let's get to part 2.
All right, so let's start with what you just mentioned, areas of consideration. So what are kind of the key things that you could consider when you're doing a CRM implementation?
So I think some of the key considerations are how big is the team?
Mm-hmm.
And if you think about the team, you need to think about company roles, like how big is the company? So how many people does the company have, or where you're working is divisionally based, how many people does the division have? Mm-hmm. How many people are market facing in either a support position? So by the way, if you have an accounts receivable clerk, if you have an accounts payable clerk, that is you probably don't need to consider that person, but you do need to consider finance roles because they do support, they impact and are impacted directly by market-facing go-to-market actions. So you need to think in terms of, the indirect elements, which by the way, also gets to a major choice in terms of your platform decision, because access is a key thing. How many people are directly involved in the go-to-market areas, and how many people are in active, direct interaction roles with customers, prospects, and that greater community, right? So salespeople, service reps, sales managers, people like that. Those are the people that are in, active roles. You're in some organizations, especially, if you're looking at 2, 3, 400, you might look, VPs might actually not be in that direct role. But, assistants, what's your estimation team, your deal desk, like all those things need to kind of come together when you think about what the team size is. I think some of the key places of delineation are, if your direct customer interactive team size is less than 10, I think probably then 10 to 25, 25 to 50, 50 to about 100, 100 to 250, 300, 300 to 1,000, 1,000 or more. Those are kind of some of the key bands that I would think about in terms of direct roles. We're going to be talking, what we're going to talk about today applies, absolutely to 50 seats or more, 50 direct or more. And I would say also, for the most part applies to 25 or more. I think what we're going to talk about has application to everything, but some of the formulas and key pieces around that, as you get under 25, I think that there's a lot more variance to what we're talking about. So team size is a critical element of consideration, and realize that what you have to take into account is Metcalfe's law. And of course, Metcalfe's law, don't you, Jess? Metcalfe's law is a law about networks, right? And so each node you add doesn't increase by 1, right? And in some ways you think, well, if I'm going from 1 to 2, that's 100% increase. So clearly that's a lot more complicated than if I go from, 99 to 100. Right. But the reality is, 100 adds more complexity. Now, maybe 99 to 100 isn't as big a number. But if you think about it, those bands that I gave you, those bands that I just talked about, those are levels of complexity that need to be considered. Then the other area that gets into your level of complexity is you do need to take into account what is your greater tech stack. And by the way, market facing and non-market facing. So what other technology is the company using? Front end, back end, what's your ERP, your finance system, what are you using in your go-to-market motions, et cetera? Because, and I keep seeing all kinds of numbers. I mean, I saw something from a reasonably credible source, SMBs on average have 300 SaaS applications. I candidly find that, well, I find it's either hard to believe or you start defining SaaS applications as, I mean, I know one thing is, Gmail or Outlook, that is a SaaS application. And I go, okay, yeah, it is. But, and again, I get that it isn't it, but, the number of applications that you're using are mushrooming. The cost of managing that are mushrooming. And so, that is gonna, really what you're trying to do when we talk about this area, is you're trying to account for your LOC. By the way, this is going to be a fun episode because we've been wrestling with a lot of the thoughts here. That's why, for those of you that haven't figured this out yet, this is one of the reasons why we're doing this podcast. Is we're trying, this is our topic. Is we're actually trying to wrestle to tighten our definitions and explanations. So you're going to hear some. It's like we're going to be creating some new stuff on this podcast.
Right. Yep.
But so LOC. So by the way, some people are going to listen to this and they're going to be like, "Oh my God, I can't believe you didn't know this, Doug." But I didn't until I think it was a couple of weeks ago. Someone put, they needed to understand what the LOE was going to be, and I'm like, okay, what is that?
That's what I was going to ask you.
Level of effort.
Okay. Yeah. All right.
So LOC is level of complexity.
Okay.
And here's the thing: the four most damaging words in any tech implementation.
All you need is, or
Well,
all I need is. All I need is.
All I need is, right?
All I need is.
Everybody wants simple. That's what they say. Let's keep it simple. Let's keep it simple. Let's keep it simple. And the problem is, actually there was I saw this. This was a quote that I picked up. I think it was actually Brian Halligan who shared it. Where is it? Where simplicity on this side of complexity, or on this side of complexity, is worthless. Simplicity on the other side of complexity is invaluable. It's something like that. It's an Oliver Wendell Holmes quote. I shared it after my after I had a quote. When was our last Blue Team meeting, Jess?
That was last week. I would not give a fig for the simplicity this side of complexity, but I would give my life for the complexity,
There you go.
for the simplicity on the other side of complexity.
Right.
That's the quote.
And here's what that means as it relates to CRM implementation. And it was Oliver Wendell Holmes, so I butchered the quote horribly, but I did get the source correct.
You did get the source correct.
What this means is the build simple, or is the execution simple? Right? And what people want, and I get it because I want it too.
Yeah.
Is they want the level of effort and cost associated with a simple build with the outcomes that come from simple execution, right? And this is where the inverse complexity law, or the inverse friction principle, comes in. And the inverse complexity law is the level of complexity in a user's experience has an inverse relationship to the complexity that went into creating that experience. Right?
Yep.
So you tell me how complex your situation is, then tell me how much you embrace that complexity in build, and I'll be able to tell you when done right. I'm not saying that if you put a complex system together, we've got Gall's law that comes in, lots of laws today, but I'm not saying that a complex build means a simple implementation or simple execution. I am saying that embracing and managing the complexity in the build is required for a simple implementation. Right. And this is why, this is where the biggest cost of CRM comes in, which is, depending upon what research you look at, 50 to 70% of CRM implementations fail to deliver on their intended results. And so you've got to grasp what your level of complexity is so that you can make sure that you're matching the strategy, the effort, and the resources to get the payoff that you're looking for.
So that's a perfect segue into.
Are you saying that was brilliant?
I did not use the word brilliant, but that didn't come out of my lips. So let's talk about the different types of costs that you have associated with an implementation.
Yeah, this gets to everybody's favorite buzzword, but nobody knows what it means. And by the way, I'm including me in that. I use this term all the time, and then I hope people don't ask me to explain it. What's the total cost of ownership? And Jess, so what professional sport are you a fan of?
Basketball.
Basketball, okay. So who's your favorite basketball player of all time?
Oh, I don't know.
Who's the best basketball player in your opinion?
Oh, Michael Jordan's the best basketball player of all time. I was gonna actually say Larry Bird's probably my favorite all time, but yeah, Michael Jordan's the best.
Which player costs more, Michael Jordan or
Scottie Pippen?
No. I don't know. I don't want to go Scottie Pippen.
You don't want to go
like who's somebody on the bench who's on the bench of the San Antonio Spurs?
Oh my God, I don't even know anymore. You could go.
Well, anyways, so Michael Jordan I think in his highest year just on basketball, I think he got paid like $35 or $40 million a year.
Yeah.
The guy on the bench is getting paid $600,000 a year.
Right.
Maybe he's getting paid $1 million a year.
Yeah.
Which one is lower cost?
Oh,
Michael Jordan.
Well,
Michael Jordan.
So why do you say that?
How many championships did Michael Jordan win?
I believe it was 5, 6. There
Six.
it is.
Won 6 championships.
Yeah.
What's that worth? How many people came to a basketball
Oh, okay, I
game
see what you're
for
saying.
Michael
Yeah.
Jordan, right?
Well,
You know,
and, yeah,
look at the attendance.
And not just Bulls fans. I mean,
Right.
like,
right.
yeah.
Right. So he had a higher price,
Sure.
but he cost less.
Yeah. Okay.
Right. I used to ask the question, you know, who's the lower cost, Tom Brady or Rex Grossman? Rex Grossman got paid 1/15th, 1/30th of what Tom Brady got paid,
Right.
but you know, he was a higher cost.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And so that's really, you know, if you haven't defined the business process, and by the way, here's the corollary to that, right? The business objective has to drive the process. The process shouldn't drive the objective, right? And so one of the difficulties that you have when you're talking about CRM implementation is nobody hires us. Nobody that I'm aware of implements a new CRM because they look at it and they go, you know what? I just want a better CRM implementation. I want our CRM to be just designed a little bit better. I mean, I don't want anything to change. I want to win the Blue Ribbon Award for
best implementation.
CRM implementation. I want the CRM. There's a business outcome that needs to be achieved. Now, the interesting thing is, and I love the promotion of it, you know, companies who have used XYZ CRM experience 67% more growth than, right? So-and-so bought our CRM and generated $50 million more pipeline after. Okay. Like, I get it, that it is both, that statement is both fair and unfair, because in and of itself, the CRM didn't create the $50 million of pipeline. Now it can enable that. Right. But it's the business process that leads to that. And so the danger is, you know, CRM is a process improvement initiative. And so if the process isn't clearly connected to the outcome, if the process isn't connected to the performance, then changing the process doesn't necessarily change performance. And by the way, and changing what enables the process doesn't necessarily change the process. And what I mean by that is, if you, and you know, we can say our least favorite customer in the world is the one that hires us. And then every time we talk about how we need to do something, they say, well, no, that's not how we do it.
Yeah.
No, that's not how we do it.
Right.
It's like, okay, well, wait a second. If you wanted to change the CRM to just do what you were already doing, then, I mean, please don't take this the wrong way, but why'd you change the CRM?
Yep.
You know, you're not going to get a different outcome. You're probably going to get a worse outcome because you just added change for no real reason. And so you need to understand, what are you trying to accomplish? Right. And I always refer, you know, there's 2 parts to our business. We've got our process improvement, our process transformation side, and our performance transformation side. Now, I think one of the things that makes us special is that we have deep expertise on both sides.
Right.
But if they're not connected, then you don't necessarily get the performance improvement. And it's the performance that drives the cost. So that connects to the first area of cost that I think about is speed versus velocity, right? I call it the velocity cost, if you will, right? I see people that you have to do 30% more with this system.
Yep.
Right? That means I have to run 30% faster.
Yep.
To just
do what you were doing
right?
before. Yeah.
Right.
Yep.
And by the way, one of the things that happens, especially in today's world, because everyone's an overstatement, but 80% plus of people in these roles, we're at near exhaustion points, right? And so we're already, for the most part, going as fast as we can. And I see too often that we add technology for the promise of enablement, and we end up just creating one more thing that somebody has to manage, right? It kind of cracks me up when I take a look at what a lot of people are talking about in terms of growth of revenue operations functions. And I want to emphasize, I mean, this is the RevOps show, right? This is like, the top producing RevOps show on Spotify, from what I understand.
Shameless plug.
So I'm a fan of RevOps, right?
Right.
I love RevOps. And no offense to anybody, we were talking about RevOps before.
Yeah.
We were talking about RevOps when people looked at us and said, what's RevOps? What's RevOps?
Huh?
Now we talk about RevOps and people go, oh, okay, yeah, cool. And they still really don't know what, like they still have the question, but they're now too ashamed to actually ask, what does that mean? But this idea, and I'm looking at mushrooming growth in headcounts in RevOps teams. And I sometimes ask the question, well, wait a second. If we're creating a better path of technology has been promising more gain for the buck.
Yep.
But I want to know, why do the costs keep going up? When does that turn? I got to invest. I got to prime the pump, but at some point the curve has to come down. And the reason is that so much of what we're doing is about speed, when what we really need to be thinking about is velocity. How is this separating the signal from the noise? One of the big things that I see is, if you think about your implementation and you think about whatever tool you're going to select, too often it just generates more of everything. And the difficulty is because the signal is always certainly below 50% of the total, right? Noise is always the majority. As I develop more, you get more and more noise. It becomes harder to get the signal. We were just looking at somebody's setup, and I think they had, well, actually, this isn't the worst one, because I looked at one a couple months ago, and I think they had 700. Actually, they had more dashboards than they have employees.
Oh my God. 700 dashboards?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. The one we just looked at, I think they had 50 some dashboards.
I've seen
workflows,
but not 700 dashboards.
I think I'm going to come up with your dashboard to employee ratio. If your dashboard to employee, I can tell you this, if your dashboard to employee ratio is greater than 1, that's definitely a problem. I think I can safely say if it's above 0.5 to 1.
I was going to say.
So the one we just looked at, if you think about it, I think they're at about 67%. They have 67% of dashboards to their employee count. And so the difficulty there, and look, I get it, because these systems, we can measure so much. So we start measuring everything. And in which case we actually know less than we did before. So the first type of cost is just, what's the velocity cost? The second cost is, what's the time? But by the way, the other velocity cost is for the people that the tool is supposed to enable. So if we're talking about CRM, we are talking about sales, marketing, customer success, customer support. Mm-hmm. How much time does it take them to be able to iterate, adjust, add, and time in hours of how much time does it take to do this, and time also in chronology, right? So if we have to go to a different, like if I have to go to IT to then request this and then to go through this whole, there's a time element that just means you've lost a large part of the benefit of tech. Does this report real time? Does this report real time? Oh yeah, absolutely. Except it takes them 7 weeks to update a simple thing. So yeah, the reporting is real time, but by the time you get it, it's no longer relevant. So I had a company I'm talking to right now, looking at a significant cost, probably in the, probably for annual, we're probably going to be about $300,000. First year, so counting the implementation, probably looking at about $500,000. And what the talking to the chief operating officer, and he said, look, part of the issue is, we pay $30,000 for our CRM right now, $30,000 a year, because it's on-prem. They just pay the ongoing maintenance, license support. And I said, well, you write a check for $30,000.
Yeah.
Right. Because you have 3 people that are supporting it. You have 3 IT people that are supporting it.
Right.
Right. Well, all of a sudden you look at that. Wait, the price is different. So how much time, chronology, and time of people is it going to take to implement? Mm-hmm. How how much are you going to continue to carry your legacy costs? How much is spent in development? How much time is it going to take to develop what you want to do? And by the way, had a great conversation with someone yesterday because they got it before I said it. It was, he's like, look, I'm sure you guys are going to be able to get this to implement fine. I'm sure everything's going to be fine on implementation, right? He said, my concern is the day after implementation.
Yeah.
Right. And I always call that day 2. And I think, it's one of the big mistakes that get made. We're all so focused on day 1. We forget day 2 is the only thing that matters.
It's interesting that you bring that up because I think I deal far more frontline when we kick off. And that question is one of the most common questions I get at kickoff. It's like, okay, this is all great. The path to launch is clear. What happens after that? And I don't think that gets considered nearly enough because everybody's hyper focused on the launch.
Correct. And that is a symptom of the technology is driving the process, not the business process. Because what happens next? Well, what happens next is the business process.
Yeah.
And the technology needs to be in a place to stay in a line, to stay connected to that. So speed versus velocity. What's your velocity cost? What's the time cost? What's the direct cost? That's, the spend.
Yep.
And then there's a utilization cost. Utilization is how fast are you able to iterate? What's the impact on productivity? One of the things that I think is the most valuable measurement of impact, and actually this is where I know we're talking about CRM implementation, but I have a take on marketing attribution, right?
Yep.
Here's how I know marketing and CRM are doing their job. Am I able to do more with the capacity that I have as a result of their actions?
Yep.
So impact on productivity and direct productivity and indirect productivity, because the teams that are using the tool have tremendous impact upstream, downstream, and side stream to other areas. How much does that drive those places? So it's like I can show in a lot of places where your CRM, like we don't have a sales problem. And I agree with you, you don't have a sales problem, right? The CRM is not going to change your sales velocity. It's going to change your operational cost. It's going to change, right? It's going to impact all of those things. And by the way, a key element of productivity is adoption and utilization. And then the other element of utilization is how much time is spent on tranches of activity. And to keep it simple, how much time is spent on low value activities versus high value activities. Why do we invest in technology? Well, one of the primary reasons we should be investing in technology is to enable people to spend less time in low value activity and more time in high value activity. Yep. And all too often they don't. And the reason for that is because the business process isn't clear. It's not mapped to, and so you end up having people that, and this, you can go back to our conversations on the role of admins, far too often we end up, cleaning up the data of, right? Yeah. Or somebody asked for reporting, but they're not really clear on what's the job that the reporting is doing. And so the reporting that they get never quite tells them what they need. So someone then has to go in and then adjust this and move to that. And
well, that connects directly to the business process being the driver. Because I find when those things are happening, it's often because the business process is not clear. And so we're trying to basically blunt force into the CRM, and we'll like just use it, figure it out, and it ends up taking up more time, and that's where you lose adoption.
Mm-hmm. You lose adoption there, no question. But I think the key place where you lose adoption is whenever if I have to take the sidewalk and it's faster to cut across the grass, I'm going to cut across the grass.
Sure. Yeah. Of course.
And you know what? I'm going to cut across the grass unless the VP of administration is there. Right? You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, I do know what you mean.
And that's how far too many people use CRM. It's like, they're looking, okay, I'm going to log this in there. Right. They're not looking, okay, I'm cutting across the grass.
Yeah. Yeah. That's what sales reps do.
In fairness, that's not what sales reps do. That's what
people do. Yeah. That's what everybody does. Yep.
Cows do it too, by the way.
Oh, do they? They stop when the administrator is there and go on the sidewalk.
Yeah. When the rancher is there to move them to go in a different direction. Do you know why the roads in Boston are so messed up? They were all cow paths.
I did not know that.
Yeah, so like, I mean, if you go back years and years, when it's so the roads got paved basically where the cows, that were delivering whatever.
Interesting.
Animals, we are programmed to take the path of least resistance. It's why if someone gets lost on a mountain and you search at the bottom, you don't search on the top.
Yeah.
People go down, right? When they're lost, they go down the mountain. They go up the mountain, right? Because so much of their brain power, that's why mountain climbing is a thing, because the natural, you have to go against nature, right? The path of least resistance is where you're going to go. How do you make, how do you find the path? Because here's the other thing too, what salesperson, what marketing person, what success person is rewarded because they use the tool correctly, but fail to accomplish the outcome.
Oh, no one.
Right. And by the way, why would we want to?
Oh,
I'm
yeah.
Sorry, Mr. Customer. I'm sorry, Mr. Customer, but I have to fill out 17 things before I can send that to you. And I know you're ready to write me a check. Like, you know what? If you're ready to write me a check right now, you write me a check. We'll figure out how to handle that. And I'm exaggerating a little bit, but yeah, I mean, there's and I get it, and Jess, you get it, right? Because you approach it both because of your mindset and the role that you're in from the process, and it's so easy to fall into, well, no, that's not how we do it.
Right. Yeah.
And then it's, well, why not? Why is that not how we do it? What's wrong with this? Well, we're not getting the information that we need. Okay. Well, is there a way that we can do it like this? Is there a way we can enable this? Because it shortcuts the path where we can get the information.
You and I have had knockdown drag out fights.
And where does it usually end?
It usually ends and we find a solution that's better. Doug usually wins. This is a shocker to everyone.
Well,
sure.
but
not because of no. I'm
right?
joking. But yeah, no, because that is usually the path of, well, we do it that way because the process is it's not the right answer.
Well, and here's a big example of cost versus price, right? We want to gain more information about somebody. And so our forms get longer. And so our conversion rates get shorter. And there's a whole trend going against forms. And oh, by the way, I don't know about the information that you fill out on a form, but I don't fill out the right. I mean, the top option in the dropdown always is the number one response, right? And so it's not even all that valuable and reliable. And like, so here's a question. And I love this, and we used to ask this question. We want to require company email addresses. I totally get that. We then ask company name. Why are we asking their company name if we have their email, if we know their email domain? Well, I want to save my team time from having to type that in. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Well, why not pay for a tool that does that automatically? And now you
right.
But I also want to know this and this and this. Okay, well, that's where lead augmentation data comes in. And all of a sudden, hey, yeah, but that's 30, 40, 50 grand. Okay, well, let's take a look. What is that information worth? How much time? Right. That's what we're talking about.
Right.
That's where technology gets its bang for the buck. Right. But how many people have those lead augmentation tools, but have never designed the business process for it to feed in and accelerate that it ends up not going anywhere?
Oh, you're going to make my head hurt. I'm living this with a few people right now. So.
Right. But that's what cost is.
Yeah.
Right. That's what cost.
Yeah, absolutely. It's time cost. It's cost on the tool because you're not fully leveraging it. So you lost there. Yeah. 100%. All right. Let's talk about status quo and the cost of status quo.
So the status quo is a really interesting, it's an interesting beast because in some ways it gets a bad rap, and in other ways it deserves to be sent down to the 7th level of hell.
Wow, tell us how you really feel.
I just wanted to say something for effect. Look, there's a cost to change. There's a cost to change. You know, if you need to have heart surgery, there's a cost to that. It's going to hurt. You're going to feel like a Mack truck drove across your chest.
Yep.
And you know what? You need to do it anyways, right? And so I get frustrated because everyone wants to tell you, I mean, look, if you don't make this change, we're talking to a company right now that literally has, I mean, it's literally individual spreadsheets. They're not even using collaborative spreadsheets. They're using
my favorite
Excel. Okay. Well, and this company is doing 800 to 1.3 billion, 800 million to 1.3 billion. Do they have to change?
No.
They're doing 800 to 1.3 billion. Now look, don't get me wrong. I don't know how they're doing 800 million to 1.3 billion that way, but they are. And so something has to be working because by the way, they're doing 800 million to 1.3 billion and they're making money. Like they're very profitable. And so there is that. And by the way, and they have a major fear because our team doesn't use it. The people in the field aren't particularly technologically savvy, on and on and on. So we're concerned, we've got to keep it simple again. Mm-hmm. And we want to pay for the simple implementation.
All I need is
and think about, will our people adopt it? And the answer is, the question is not will they adopt the CRM. The question is, will they adopt the business process? Now, I would say that if you can execute the business process that you want to execute without using new technology,
then
I would do that.
Yeah.
The best technology is none. That's why I like to take naps. A state of nothingness.
There it is.
So what you have, like the real cost of the status quo, and it's hard to identify, and this gets back to what's the outcome, what's the performance that needs to change before you talk about the process, is there is a cost of friction, right? Now, to emphasize, all friction is not bad, but friction should be highly tied to areas of real value creation. Yep. Friction is a cost. It is an invisible cost. And one of the difficulties is whenever you try to identify and label friction, they're always small things that don't need a lot. And I use the analogy that they're very much like barnacles on a boat, right? And by the way, you're always going to have friction. You're never going to be in a 100% optimal, right? There's no such place. Entropy is always increasing. Friction is always increasing. Mm-hmm. But you need to understand what your cost of friction is and how much of what are you doing today you're doing because that's how you do it, as opposed to what you're doing today is because you're doing it by design. So I have no problem with not changing. I'm a fan of not changing. And as a matter of fact, I've learned a very, very hard lesson. As an idea person, as a strategy person, I love to come in and say, hey, let's change this up.
Yeah.
Right? I come in and say, hey, this has been working really well. It's been working really well for the last 3 years. I don't know about you guys, but I'm kind of getting bored by it. So let's change it up.
Let's change our project management software, Jess. Let's do that for fun. I'm aware.
Like, where's the challenge here? Right. So I am, I'm all for not changing. I'm sorry. I learned the hard way that I'm wrong more often than I'm right, that we need to change.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
But that needs to be choice. The choice to change, the choice to not change. It can't be default, right? When you don't change, you're making a decision not to change. right? When I was a financial advisor, I worked with people with very highly concentrated stock positions. Remember one of my favorite stories? I did it many times, but he had $5 million of investments. He had like 4.3 million in ExxonMobil. He was an executive at ExxonMobil. And we're talking about, I lay out an investment strategy. He's like, Doug, this looks great. But let's wait before we do anything with Exxon. And by the way, it was always that, if Exxon was in a down trend, it would be, let's wait for Exxon to come back. If Exxon was in an uptrend, it was like, let's wait for Exxon to finish that uptrend. Like we would know when that's going to happen. Right. And so I would say to him, I'm like, okay, no, I get it. Because what he would say is, look, I don't want to change things up until. I said, okay, no, I get it. I said, I'm curious. I want you to pretend for the moment that you have no money. You're absolutely, I mean, you're not homeless. You're living your life, but literally, every day the money that you spend is the money that you have. You have no other money. And your fairy godmother comes down and says, I'm going to give you $5 million on one condition. And that condition is you have to invest all of it. My question to you is, how much of that $5 million are you going to invest in ExxonMobil? And the response was always, well, I mean, that's a good question, but Doug, I would definitely invest. I'd definitely put a significant amount of it in ExxonMobil. ExxonMobil's a good stock. And I replied, yeah, no, I think ExxonMobil's a great stock. Back then it was. It probably still is. I said, but would you put 80% of it? Would you put 4 million in it? And the answer was always, whatever the number was different. The answer was always, well, no, I wouldn't put that much in. I said, right. Here's what I want you to understand. When you have money invested in the stock market, every morning you wake up, your fairy godmother comes down and says, here's the money. Do you want to buy or do you want to sell? And every day you don't make a sell decision, you're making a buy decision. So every day you're buying $4.2 million of ExxonMobil, right? So the idea that the status quo means things aren't changing, that's the myth. That's what you have to understand. So you need to understand what is the cost of your status quo, right? What is the cost of friction? And then what is the impact of acceleration? Technology is not a solution. Business process is the solution. Technology is an enabler and accelerator. And, if you're driving the Barney Rubble special and you go out and you get a wonderful exterior, but you're still, it's still your feet that are moving the car, right? Then again, nothing has really changed. It goes back to what is the change that needs to happen in the business process that's going to drive how you evaluate and understand what's needed. Because the focus should be, and I'm going to give a caveat, the focus should always be on what is it worth, not what does it cost. Because if you get on what does it cost, you're not going to be in a total cost mindset. You're going to be focused more on price, and you're going to diminish the key things that make the difference. And if you look at what your cost of implementations are, very rarely are they the difference between organization success or failure. Now, that does not mean spend money for the sake of spending money. And I've had some people try to give me the what's it worth, right? Like if I could, do whatever, what would that be worth? And my answer to them sometimes is, look, that's a moronic question, because either what's it worth is literally invaluable. Like, what would it be worth if I could give you perfect health? My response is, fuck you. Or do we need to get are we going to get an explicit warning on the podcast?
We might.
I don't think that's the first F-bomb I've dropped on this show.
Probably not. And I've probably dropped a few, I'm sure.
There's a place where, look, that might be worth $5 million, but I'm not paying you $5 million for that.
Right.
So yeah, there's a, what's it worth is not unlimited by any stretch of the imagination, but you do need to understand, and this is what we're going to get into in the next episode. You do need to understand what is the outcome that you're trying to achieve. What are the inputs that you need to have so that, and this is what a good CRM will do. This is what any good system will do. a good CRM will enable your team to focus on the process, to focus on have good process and let the outcomes take care of itself. Bill Walsh's autobiography, love the book, The Score Takes Care of Itself.
Yep.
You ask a hitter, the worst thing that you can think is to go up and say, I need to get a hit. If you're focused on the result, it's going to send you down, right? What I want to do is I want to have a good at bat. If I can string together a series of good at bats, then success takes care of itself, right? And that's why, again, the business process drives that. And when you tie your enablers to your process to your outcomes, right? Realizing that it's a complex ecosystem, so there's always variations and deviations that are happening.
Yep.
That's how you get to this point of predictable growth. That's how you get to this idea of scale.
Yep.
And when you go halfway, that's a lot of times where, for me at least, that halfway is the juice is not worth the squeeze.
That falls into some category as me. It's paying too little. I mean,
well, yeah, it does, right?
Yeah, the same thing.
Now I should say that and we probably want to dig in this in the next episode. What we talk about when you're again with a CRM platform, you should be launching your CRM 3 to 4 times per year.
Yep.
And so what you're doing when you're rolling something out, so remember, if you're changing a core piece of technology, you're changing behavior. So it is change management. It is an ongoing iterative process. And what you need to do, we talk about defining the next milestone of complete. What is complete? By the way, definition of complete for me is where's the juice worth the squeeze? And how do we call it done?
Yep.
And what people do, because they define too much by what's wrong with the current situation, is they get from being broken to not broken. But not broken doesn't mean fixed, and fixed doesn't mean healthy.
Yep.
Right. And so you get to the not broken phase, and the difficulty there is it has no staying power. Mm-hmm. You get a modicum of immediate improvement, which is driven more by attention than anything else, with a little bit of process support. But you've actually just added more legacy cost and more complexity.
Yep, I agree. All right. So I have a couple of key takeaways. The CRM implementation is a process improvement initiative. I like that. I thought it was an IT initiative, but that was a joke.
No, I know. So it is a process improvement initiative, and if you want it to have any impact, it needs to be tied to a performance improvement initiative.
Yep. Key areas to consider are the company size, the team size, the roles of who's going to be using the system, and then understanding your overall tech stack. And then I really liked what you said around status quo and understanding the cost of status quo, and the myth of the status quo is that nothing's changed, which I think is, like, I see that all the time. So those were my key.
And what I'm saying is, if someone comes in and says, this is going to be easy, or this is going to be inexpensive, and you're talking about an initiative that matters, what you need to ask in response is,
were these magic grits?
I almost asked somebody that when I was talking about data migration this week. I'm not going to lie.
And on that, we will keep you waiting for part 3, where we're going to get into the areas of cost, and we're going to give you some guidance on what to expect.
All right, until next time.
And that's a wrap on this episode of the RevOps Show. As a reminder, this is turning into a 3-part series, so don't forget to listen to part 1 and stay tuned for part 3. If you enjoyed this episode, please make sure to go subscribe on Spotify and Apple Podcasts, leave us a review, and share the episode. If you have any questions you would like to ask Doug or Jess about this series around CRM implementations and what they should cost, or anything else RevOps related, email me at hannah@imagine reimaginellc.com or hit us up on Twitter @demandcreator. Until next time, remember, you can't solve your upstream problems downstream.